Hello and welcome to my last presentation for this class. This will be the conclusion between the two theories, psychoanalysis and attachment theory. So first we're going to go through psychoanalysis in pros and cons, what's good about it, what's bad about it, and of course specifically how it pertains to Tony Stark. And then we'll go to attachment theory, again, pros and cons, and then we will decide which one is the best out of the two, which best portrays and explains Tony's personality and behavior. Right, so first up is psychoanalysis. So some of the pros are that previous experiences can affect current behavior, and that is certainly something that psychoanalysis was the forerunner on. And in the case of Tony Stark, his past experiences certainly did influence the entire Age of Ultron movie. Specifically, the Avengers movie directly influences all of Age of Ultron. And the other pro is childhood trauma. And in that vein, we do know that Tony's relationship with his father wasn't the best. And we can see that in how his father's legacy affected how Tony decided to run the company after his father died. And of course, always the iceberg, the unconscious. Again, this was something that psychoanalysis was a forerunner on. It definitely introduced the world to unconscious actions and behaviors and how we might not always know what affects our behavior directly. And in the case of Tony Stark, though you can claim that Tony is fairly self-aware regarding his trauma, he cannot distinguish between saving the world and destroying it, as Wanda says in Age of Ultron. Or rather, that saving the world is a trauma response, and Tony believes that saving the world involves creating better shields that are equipped with weapons to supposedly protect. But weapons cannot protect without destroying. And then we have social pressures, or the superego, our ideal self. And you could say that the superego is a result of social pressures that influence a person's decisions and their behavior. In the case of Tony, Tony and his idea of a hero and being a hero, is he being a hero because he believes humans are worth protecting? Or is Tony a hero because he feels the need to compensate for contributing to and inciting wars and sacrificing millions of lives? Being the latter being a social pressure. Now we'll move on to psychoanalysis and the cons. So this is admittedly a little easy. The many cons of psychoanalysis are the idea of incest, sexual pleasure driving all behavior, dreams always having some sort of meaning, and developmental stages focusing on sex and literally nothing else. Again, probably shouldn't, and it is unnecessary to sexualize infants and children, regardless of what academic context it might be in. Probably not a good idea, much less attribute it to developmental stages. The course of sexual pleasure, motivating a lot of behavior. Yes, humans are horny, but that isn't always the case, and it is often not the case. Rather, some humans are horny, yes, but not everything is about sex. And more so, sexuality is a lot more diverse than Freud thought it was. And the causes of sexuality are not because of some weird incestual desires as a child. or any kind of developmental stages of what we would now say is just body exploration. Because infants, when they're really small, they're still realizing that they have 10 toes. So that's not about sex at all. And dreams, again, not every single dream has a symbolic meaning or any clues to the person's unconscious. Sometimes a dream is just a dream. So, for example, in dreams, Wanda's insight into Tony's worst fear is just a visual tool to show the audience. There are no other references to dreams, nightmares, or visions in the entirety of Age of Ultron, unless you count that one time that Tony mentioned it to Nick Fury. And yes, regarding sexual pleasure, that sure, Tony is a playboy and he certainly has quite a few sexual partners before his change of heart in Iron Man and commitment to Pepper, but very little of this behavior and any of it is part of his behavior and identity is motivated by sex. All right, on to attachment theories, some of the pros. So, childhood experiences, behavior as an adult, how relationships are formed and maintained in adulthood, and responsibility of the parents. So, in childhood experiences, again, the past can influence current behavior, and behavior as an adult are symptoms of attachment styles. Tony's avoidant, dismissive behavior is reflected in almost every movie he's in. In Age of Ultron, he hits all of the markers: social butterfly, fair weather friends, denying emotions, and especially emotional reactions, denying emotional support of any kind, independence, and high self-esteem. How relationships are formed and maintained in adulthood. More symptoms of attachment styles. Tony in the Marvel canon is approximately 46 years old in Age of Ultron, and by Western society standards, that's usually a little bit late to find a committed relationship. And he is barely starting a relationship with Pepper that looks healthy. And it can certainly be assumed that his relationship with Pepper is the first and only healthy romantic relationship he has ever had. And responsibility of the parents. Tony carries a lot of guilt for the actions of his father, and with attachment theory, the child, Tony, shoulders a lot less, or none, responsibility of the sins of their parents. But what are the cons of attachment theory? I love it so much, it was a little hard to do this one. First and foremost, secure attachment is not really talked about in attachment theory. It's rarely explored and not very much elaborated on. From what little is shown in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, was Tony's relationship with his father really that insecure? From what little we know, should we really be viewing his current behavior through a lens that depends on such little information? And secondly, there are only 5 attachment styles. There is certainly room for more. Yes, there are combination and comorbidities exist, and they are often discussed, but are they enough to explain all personalities? And another shortcoming of attachment theory is it doesn't address severe trauma. So, I mean severe trauma like childhood sexual abuse, physical abuse, more, I suppose, rough events in childhood. So, like severe emotional manipulation, again, abuse, violence, and abuse. And society and social pressures are not really addressed in attachment theory. Attachment theory doesn't explain the influence of social pressures on behavior and personality. For example, Tony's heroism. Attachment theory explains Tony's heroism as a result of an attachment style, whereas psychoanalytic theory might explain it away as a way to satisfy sexual desires. Just for example, different theories, different ideas of what social pressures are, and again, attachment theory doesn't really regard social pressures as a factor, which, again, a shortcoming, a con, if you will. Now, which one is the best of the best? In my opinion, I believe that attachment theory is the most relevant to Tony Stark, and this is because it is the most, um, again, relevancy, because psychoanalysis was made in like the 1920s. Freud had a different understanding of behavior and personality than we do now. Through research and more psychologists adding ideas and inventing different ones and building on those and more research, it's important to acknowledge that psychoanalysis was perhaps a good beginning, but it is certainly not relevant anymore. It might be relevant in how it is influenced current theories and how it basically came up with the idea that past experiences and there are sometimes unconscious motivations to behavior. And that's fair. But again, a lot of psychoanalysis just isn't relevant anymore, especially Freud's developmental stages for children. So, again, attachment theory wins. So, not only does past behavior, past traumas affect current behavior, um, and those traumas are almost always a result of parenting styles or just general trauma of some kind with relationships in the childhood. And attachment theory also, Tony Stark hits a lot more of the markers in the different attachment styles, particularly avoidant dismissive style. And with attachment theory, there's more focus on current behavior and current traumas or traumatic responses that occur during adulthood rather than childhood, and the unconscious or any sexual motivators that psychoanalysis often does. And that's everything. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.